of my least favorite expressions in the world, in addition to, pardon my French, normally said of things that are distinctly not French, is, oh, it's only semantics. And I think the cartoon, for which I thank Emily again, since she's the one who thought of putting it on the poster, does a very nice job of summing up what's wrong with people's use of the word semantics. What I want to do today is talk a little bit about the kind of framework in which I look at language change. Because I don't do semantics from a descriptive point of view. That is modern descriptive, though you'll get a little bit of that at the end. But I do it from a historical point of view. And the framework I use is called variously cognitive grammar, cognitive semantics, cognitive linguistics. And I think there's probably a short paper to be written about the way this field is labeled. But that's for another time. The word cognitive is in the title, whichever version of it you look at. And the claim is that there is a particularly strong relationship between mental functioning and linguistic functioning that comes out in the way language is understood in this framework. It's debatable, highly debatable. There have been, shall I say, lively discussions online as well as in writing about whether we have the right to use the word cognitive or if that's all of linguistics. But it is indeed, and has been now for, goodness, since the 1970s, late 1970s, certainly early 80s, the name of a particular theory, or the names of a particular theory. Very quickly, I know that this is a mixed group of people who are students and of linguistics themselves, and those who do literature, and some who do other things that some I know and some I don't. So very quickly, for the linguists in the room, I'll simply say it is, in some senses, an anti-modular theory of how the brain works, certainly in relationship to language. What it calls upon is fairly general linguistic structures fairly general cognitive structures, and demonstrates, the goal is to demonstrate that we can make sense of language use, understanding and production by using these rather general structures. Up for debate, and again I'm talking more to the linguists for a moment, but not necessarily not the rest of you. Up for debate is where we draw the line. Are there specific language areas, well, probably not areas, but specific language structures in the brain, or are there not? And I should say Jeff and I debate this on and off, because he's a phonologist and makes a pretty good point that if there's going to be anything, it's probably in the sound area rather than the grammar area, that there are specific structures. He's talking next week.
Next Tuesday.
So you can get tag team cognitive linguistics. Among those central functions, those rather general central functions that I want to talk about and show how they can be used in understanding language change, are two. One is categorization. And I didn't put a bibliography on this, but George Lakoff's book, Women, Fire, and Dangerous Things, is a quite thorough, and speaking editorially, badly organized setting out of where cognitive linguistics stands on the interaction between categorization and meaning. If you want to read it, I do recommend it, but I recommend the case studies, which is the last third of it, rather than the discussion at the beginning. We categorize far more than just language. We categorize faces. If one of the most basic ones is, do we recognize this face or do we not? That's cognitive functioning. We categorize tunes. We categorize colors. I mean, there's a huge literature on color categorization. The other thing, and underlying categorization, before I go on, are the fact that as human beings, we scan our environment, and anybody who has thought about it for any length of time at all will know that there is so much in the environment at all times that we're selective in what we notice. So perpetually scanning, perpetually assigning salience or ignoring, and there I'm sure a continuum of degrees of attention. And then having noticed something, having scanned, having noticed, well, what is it? From a multitude of directions. It's been suggested evolutionarily that this is a protective device. And the example I always use is that long, narrow thing on the ground a stick, or is it a snake? Do I have to worry about it or not? Okay, so categorization of various kinds. The other thing that we do as human beings that fits very nicely into looking at language and is very basic, I think, to cognition, is that we abstract, we schematize. So that not only do we make decisions about how things fit together into categories, but we also we also try and pull out what forms the category. This is most of the time, for many, well, not most, I don't know if it's most of the time or not, but for many things, it's totally unconscious. I mean, face recognition probably is fairly conscious because as someone comes down the hall toward you, particularly if your eyesight is not wonderful or you don't have your glasses on for the moment, you may be left thinking, do I know this person or not? Or, possibly without knowledge, is this person someone I want to make eye contact with or not? Categorization. Categorization in the name of self-defense, possibly, in some of these. Okay, what does this have to do with language? Well, one of the things that cognitive grammar does talk about at great length, and I think is essentially right, is that meaning is, on the whole, polysemous. Words, grammatical structures, and I'll get to that a little later, don't have one single meaning. They have a multitude of meanings. And we can get, for any particular unit, use a neutral term, for any particular unit, we can argue about, is there one meaning or more than one meaning? Are the multiple meanings all the same word, or where does it go into a different word? One example, and I apologize to people who've heard me speak before because I use it, is the category of cup. You can start a fight in a classroom, if you're so inclined, by asking the difference between a cup and a mug, and asking if they're the same thing. You get interesting results. I mean, that's on the easy level of a physical item, two physical items. Is this one category or two? Up for grabs. And I don't think I'm going to spend time giving my views on cups. It's not necessary. You get the point. And among cups, well, is this a cup? Well, in English, probably yes, because we use the word cup for it. But this is a container of liquid that you drink from. We wouldn't use cup. Other languages might use the same word or the same core word with a compound. I mean, we call this a paper cup or a styrofoam cup, if we want to differentiate. This is what I mean by categorization and getting at multiple words that have multiple meanings. The meanings may not be dictionary meanings, but they can be different uses of the word. And this is so for items, units of all sizes. From below the level of a word, morphemes, all the way up, I would argue, and many do also, to grammatical constructions as being essential.